Hey everybody, welcome to True Crime Freaks, my new podcast. I want to tell you about the different ways you can support this podcast. One is you can go to my other podcast, Lights Camera Pro, where I interview TV and film professionals about their careers. And I also do movie reviews and TV show reviews. You can check out one of my online courses. I've got an Adobe Premiere Basics course and a Secrets of How to Start a Podcast course. Those are at thinkific.com. Just search them when you go there. We also have a merch store. Just search the podcast at teespring.com and check out our hoodies, t-shirts, and mugs. I also have a children's book called Feldman Runs Away, which is on amazon.com. You can always support the podcast by going to Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen, subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast does have graphic content. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks, everybody. Scott Peterson is on death row in San Quentin State Prison for murdering his wife, Laci Peterson, and their unborn child. Since being sentenced in 2005, he has been living a cushy life behind bars, playing basketball, living in a cell alone, and buying whatever he wants because of donations. Life in prison is really not that bad for Scott Peterson. This episode used articles from 2020, the Baltimore Sun, NBC News, and Murderpedia. Okay, so here's the first update. A California district attorney said in a court filing that she won't seek a new death sentence against Scott Peterson, convicted in 2005 of murdering his pregnant wife. The Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office said it would drop efforts to restore the penalty thrown out last year by the state Supreme Court. The DA said the decision was made in consultation with Laci Peterson's family. The California justices ruled that the death sentence couldn't stand because potential jurors were excluded after saying they disagreed with the death penalty. Laci Peterson's family has no doubt that Peterson killed his wife and unborn son, Connor, and deserves the death penalty, but doesn't want to pursue the punishment because this process is simply too painful to endure once again. District Attorney Bridget Fladager said in her filing in a San Mateo Superior Court. So the Supreme Court throws out the death penalty for Scott, and Laci's family decides that it's too painful to go through another trial. So this guy is not getting the death penalty when he absolutely should. He's one of these people who should definitely get the death penalty. He not only killed his wife, which is a horrible thing, but she was also pregnant. And it's obvious to me, I mean, you guys can tell me what you think, but it's obvious to me that he did it because he just wanted to keep his girlfriend. He didn't want his girlfriend to know about, like, somehow killing his wife would make her disappear and the girlfriend would find out about it eventually. It's absolutely insane. This guy killed his wife and unborn child, and he gets a break from the courts. I mean, how often do people have opinions about the death penalty either way and still are on a jury? But the question is, will there be a new trial? Now, I watched the 2020 new episode about Scott Peterson, and this is what I found out. So they focused a lot on Janie Peterson, who is Scott's sister-in-law. So this isn't even his sister by birth. This is his sister-in-law, and she has spent the last 18 years trying to prove Scott's innocence. And I guess Scott Peterson's family still believes that he's innocent. They've been helping her, but they went through some taped phone calls and really nothing happens with that. It's just Scott saying he's innocent still. And this woman, Janie, his sister-in-law, just has all these charts and pictures and maps in her house, a whole room dedicated to freeing Scott. She's saying, obviously something else could have happened. It's like, nobody's going to kill a woman who's pregnant. She's obviously 8 months pregnant. It's not like she can hide it. The alternative theory is that there was a burglary across the street, and those 3 men who were stealing TVs decided to kill Laci because she saw them, and they're going to kill a pregnant woman. No way. I mean, there's just not enough time. There's not enough reason for it. It would never happen. And everybody's saying she went on a walk with the dog. Maybe not obviously to you, but to me, it seemed like she never even went on a walk. She was just killed in the house, taken out on the boat, and dumped. That's what happened, in my opinion. So Nancy Grace was on the episode, and she did say something that really struck me, and it was that if an unknown assailant kills someone, they shoot or stab them right there in the street, and they leave the body. They don't take it out on a boat and dump it by an island in the middle of this lake. That nobody's going to do that. And they're just getting out of there. So this detective, Brocchini, interviewed Peterson. And the thing that all the detectives say about him, and all the people who investigated the case, the reporters, is that his demeanor never changes. He's never urgent. He's never scared. He's never freaking out for his wife who has disappeared. He's never freaking out for his wife who is missing. And he's just totally flat, totally calm all the time. The one thing that's very telling is that Scott didn't want his picture on the wall in the missing persons center they set up in a school or a government building or something. They had all these pictures of Laci, and once in a while Scott would be in the picture. He didn't want him up there because he didn't want the media to be shooting these pictures and have Amber see it on the TV. It's totally insane. Okay, so here's another crazy thing, and I don't know if you remember this. I didn't remember this. It was 18 years ago, and I saw bits and pieces of this case on TV, but I didn't really follow it. And I don't know, maybe you're too young to have seen it on TV. Maybe you're 20 years old and you were 2 years old. But there was a vigil for Laci, and hundreds of people were there, and they had the candles, and the families, both families were up on stage, and Scott was not up on stage. He was in the back of the crowd. Nobody actually saw him there, but there were pictures of him that the media took where he was way, way in the back of the crowd and talking to some people. And actually, he called Amber at his wife's vigil, who was missing, called his girlfriend that he was having an affair with, and he's lying to Amber. They got the recording, I believe from Amber. It might have been from the police, but they got the recording of the phone call, and Amber is saying, "Hey, Happy New Year, where are you?" And he's saying he's at the Eiffel Tower, and then he's saying he wish he could be with her and all this crazy stuff. So he's sitting there at his wife's vigil calling his girlfriend. He's up the street from his girlfriend, and he's telling her that he's at the Eiffel Tower on New Year's Eve on a business trip. I mean, totally, totally insane, totally sick to do that. So Amber Frey has a press conference. She sees him on television. She realizes it's him. She's in total shock, and she can barely speak when she calls the police department. And she says, "Hey, I'm in a relationship with this guy who's on TV. I didn't know he was married. I didn't know his wife was missing." And they brought her in, and she had a press conference, and the police were very, very nice to her. And even after she did her little speech about, "I had a romantic relationship with Scott, and I had no idea he was married. I had no idea his wife was missing. I feel bad for Laci's family, and I pray that they find her." She says, "I hope you respect my privacy and just leave me alone." And then even the sheriff gets up after that and says, "Everyone, please respect Amber's privacy." And of course they didn't. It was a media circus. The police detective, Bocchini, however you say it, he told Amber that he would be right over her house once she called in and said that she had a romantic relationship with Scott. And this was a bombshell. And this turned the entire investigation from, "I really think Scott did it," to Scott absolutely did it, because now he had motive. He had a girlfriend, so he wanted to get rid of his wife and maybe not have to pay child support or pay alimony, or just get rid of her because he was in this. This happens. It happened with Chris Watts. He wanted to get rid of his wife and kids because he had a girlfriend for like a month or 2 months. I mean, these guys are dating these women for 2 months and they want to kill their wives. It's absolutely insane. Just get a divorce, dude, and pay the money. Don't, pay your responsibility for your child support or whatever comes your way, but don't kill them. Obviously, someone's going to find out and you're going to go to jail. It's just, it's not ethical, but it's also stupid because you're going to get caught. And I do just have to say this really quickly. Like, Scott Peterson is one of those guys. He belonged to a country club and he had a boat. He was still not even 30 when he killed Laci. He's just one of those guys who thinks he can get, first of all, he's a sociopath. He has no feelings. He has no remorse. But he just has that thing where I've met so many of these guys because I golf. And they just feel like they can do anything and get away with it. It's like no body, no crime. Like they just think they can kill their wives and no one's going to connect him because they can't find a body. And he put weights on it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it's just so pompous and arrogant of this guy to think that he can get away with this and be totally confident. And it's so great when he doesn't and he goes to jail because he totally deserves to go to jail. After the entire community of Modesto, California, where this happened, learned that Scott Peterson had an affair with Amber Fry, they call off all the searches for Laci. Like, they haven't found Laci yet. They haven't found her body. And they just call everything off. Sadly, 4 months after Laci Peterson went missing, the authorities found a woman's torso, not an entire body, and the remains of a fetus male child washed up on the shore of the lake where Scott took his boat out, and supposedly Laci took a walk with the dog. The bodies were confirmed to be Laci Peterson and Scott and Laci's unborn child. Laci's mom was concerned that Scott was going to disappear before they could arrest them. And Scott was driving around all day that day that it was announced that they had found the body. And they wanted to wait for the DNA to come back to make sure it was Laci. They were pretty sure it was Laci and the unborn child, but Scott was driving all over California erratically fast, and unmarked cop cars were following him, and they just wanted to grab him, and they thought he was going to flee, so they just had to grab him. The police pulled him over and arrested him. Okay, so this is the crazy part. Scott had dyed his hair. He had a goatee that he dyed blonde. He dyed his hair blonde. He had hiking boots. He had $15,000 in cash. He had knives in his car. He had shovels. He had his brother's ID. So not his ID, but his brother's ID. He was obviously going to run. And his excuse, he always has an excuse for everything, is that he just wanted to be prepared to get away from the media and hide from the media. Like, everything was the media's fault, not Scott Peterson's fault. Scott Peterson was represented by attorney Mark Garagos, who's a celebrity attorney. He had represented Michael Jackson and other celebrities. I think Winona Ryder in a trial. And what the prosecution was saying, the prosecution's lawyers, is that Scott doesn't look like a killer. He looks like an average guy from an average neighborhood who plays golf, who has a steady job, who probably was going to be a good dad. He golfed, and the prosecution knew that, and they wanted to make sure, they wanted to get as much evidence as possible against this guy so that the jury, which is possibly going to be made up of his peers and his community, would not let this guy off for this crime. So they went to Scott's house. They looked at his computer. He was looking at currents and the bay where Laci's body was found on his computer. He was looking at how the water moved in that area. And then they went to his shop. He had a boat shop, and it looked like he had made homemade anchors there. And when they found the body, there was 4 40-pound anchors that had sunk the body. Now, Amber Frey blew the trial wide open because a lot of the jurors were interviewed by 2020 or ABC News back in 2017, and they had said that they had thought that Scott was innocent until Amber Frey came, and she brought in these tapes, and on the tapes she was asking Scott why he said that he lost his wife. So he had this conversation saying, I lost my wife. It's going to be the first Christmas without my wife, before she was missing. And Scott, of course, had an excuse. And he said, well, I lost her in a different sense. I'd lost her as a wife, not that she was dead. And Amber was like, I understand it as he was saying that she was dead. She was gone. This was after he admitted to Amber that he was married. He would have never told her this when he was lying to her about being married. So Amber was totally central to this case. Scott Peterson was found guilty of second-degree murder, got 30 years to life, and then he was sentenced to the death penalty. Now, flash ahead from 2003 to 2021, 18 years later, and the death penalty was overturned by the California Superior Court in the Scott Peterson case. The court found that the potential jurors were dismissed erroneously, in part because they expressed general objections to the death penalty on a questionnaire. And I'm thinking this happens all the time. It's like, you either object to the death penalty or you agree with it. And so you can't be a juror? Why would you throw out the death penalty for a guy who killed his wife and unborn child because somebody expressed objections to the death penalty? It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe it makes sense to you. Let me know. Okay, so something else happened. One of the jurors was also pregnant. And she had a restraining order against a boyfriend, and she didn't disclose that the boyfriend was violent, and she was pregnant, and she didn't say that when she was being interviewed by the lawyers, and they're saying it might have been juror misconduct, so they might have another trial, which once again doesn't make sense to me. It's like, it's the lawyer's responsibility on both sides to ask the questions, and then she has to answer them truthfully. So if she had lied about it, sure, that's juror misconduct. But if they didn't ask her about it and she didn't say anything about it, then it should be left alone, in my opinion. So the death penalty is off the table for Scott. He's not going to go get a needle. He's not going to die in prison, which I totally don't agree with. It happened. It's the courts. And even Laci Peterson's family is like, and the detectives are like, okay, they took it off the table, whatever. He just needs to stay in prison for the rest of his life. So now they are trying to have another trial because of this one juror not saying that she was pregnant and she had a restraining order on a violent ex-boyfriend. I hope he doesn't get another trial. I hope he stays in jail and never leaves. What do you think? Let me know on social media at True Crime Freaks Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I would love to know what you think about this case and any of the other cases that I've done. I've done Heather Elvis's disappearance. I've done Nexium. I've done the Night Stalker. I've done the Cecil Hotel. I've done so many cases, and people are listening. Thousands of listeners. I think we're up to 8,000 or 9,000 downloads so far since this podcast started in January 2021. So thanks everybody for listening. Tell your friends about it. post it or retweet it or anything you can do to help the podcast grow. But I really would love your feedback about episodes and what you think, what you liked about the episode, what you didn't like, or even better, what episodes you'd like me to do in the future. Any cases, I'm thinking about doing the Kendrick Johnson case. There's some other Dateline cases I'm looking at, but I would love to get feedback from people and just hear, what cases fascinate you or what serial killers fascinate you. And maybe I'll do an episode on it in the future. All right, everybody, take care. Sean signing off. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next week in the next chilling episode of True Crime Freaks, you freaks. Thanks so much. Sean signing off. Hey, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Freaks, my new podcast. I want to tell you about the different ways you can support this podcast. One is you can go to my other podcast, Lights Camera Pro, where I interview TV and film professionals about their careers. And I also do movie reviews and TV show reviews. You can check out one of my online courses. I've got an Adobe Premiere Basics course and a Secrets of How to Start a Podcast course. Those are at thinkific.com. Just search them when you go there. We also have a merch store. Just search the podcast at teespring.com and check out our hoodies, t-shirts, and mugs. I also have a children's book called Feldman Runs Away, which is on Amazon.com. You can always support the podcast by going to Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen, subscribe, rate, and review. This podcast does have graphic content. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Joseph McDade for the music. I will see you next time in the next chilling story on True Crime Freaks. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day. I'm Sean Ventura. Take care.